From awaytogarden.com and robinhoodradio.com, this is A Way to Garden with Margaret Roach, your weekly invitation to dig in and grow.
What do you plan to do differently in the garden in 2020? Maybe something that didn't work out so well this year, or a project that's been put off so long that it simply must be placed at the top of the list for spring. We've got some garden resolutions to share today, but first, this message.
Underwriting support from Timber Press, your go-to resource for books in gardening and nature. Whether you're a new gardener, a professional at the top of your field, or a reader interested in the wonders of the natural world, their books are there to help you grow. timberpress.com.
Last time Ken Druse visited the show, just a couple of weeks back, we got so sidetracked into talking about favorite tools that we rely on that we barely started sharing our garden resolutions. And then time ran out. So he's back today, as promised, to make his confessions, and I will make mine. So welcome, Ken. You ready to confess?
Mea culpa, mea culpa.
Yeah, me too, a culpa, too. Oh, boy. So we're not just approaching the end of the year, but the end of a decade. So we better make some hefty resolutions, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not sad to see that decade go. Years ago, I made a New Year's resolution, and I've kept it. And my New Year's resolution was to not make New Year's resolutions.
Okay, so sorry.
So I like that you're saying garden resolutions, because I'm going to make some of those.
Okay, so do you want to start by telling me some of yours, and before I tell you some of mine?
Yeah, I'll start with a real quick story. Many years ago, I was at Helen Stoddar's garden in Worcester, Massachusetts, and she was planting magnolia whips. And I was with some of her friends, and they said, "Oh, Helen, why are you planting such small trees?" And she was, richer than dirt. And I remember she was about 75 years old, and when she was 90, she was sitting on a bench in the shade of those trees. So I try to remind myself, plant it anyway.
Right.
Because it crosses my mind, I'm not going to see this mature, or maybe I won't have fruit in my lifetime. Just plant it.
So no stinking thinking, as they would call it in a self-help program, right?
Right.
Right. None of that negativity. And the other thing is that even if you don't literally get to sit under it like Helen Stoddard did, someone will. And so, yeah, plant it. All right. So that's a good one.
Or plant it for kids, plant it for grandkids.
Exactly.
Because they're cutting down too many trees anyway, so plant trees.
Yes.
I thought about my resolutions, and they're almost all about woody plants. I'm so into woody plants. So now you want to tell me one, then I'll tell you one, then you tell me one, then I'll tell you one.
Well, mine are a little more, complicated. Like I really need therapy because, and I mentioned this very briefly at the end of the last visit to the show that you were on, that I have to acknowledge, speaking of 12-step programs and self-help, little mantras and stuff, I'm powerless over ... I'm powerless over some of those early ground covers that I planted, 30 years ago or whatever. Yes. All these things, I wrote a book about ground covers. We were all into ground covers. There was a whole ground cover section in every catalog. And a lot of them turned out to be thugs. And so they spread a lot, and that was a good thing. At least it felt like a good thing to a beginning gardener, but it's not a good thing. And now I've got all these things that are romping farther and farther, and they've far out, gone beyond their bounds. And so the problem is, and maybe other people listening have this problem too in a small or a big way in their gardens, if they've been there even 10 years or 5 years, stuff that's where it's not supposed to be. It's gone farther than you intended. And, we can turn a blind eye, and then suddenly you've got a mile of it. And if you look at it all, every instance of that in your whole garden, I need to divide this, I need to take that out, I need to blah, 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 you get paralyzed. At least I do, right? So my resolution was I made it this past fall when I was doing cleanup. And I said, you know what? I had a helper that day, and I said, you know what? Today we're going to spend our 4 hours. We're going to pull out this one section of Lamiastrum. It's sort of a nettly-like thing, a variegated ground cover. We're going to do this one section, and then this winter we're going to sit and have coffee someday, and we're going to decide what ground cover plugs, little baby plants to order, native probably shade plants or ferns or whatever, that are going to go in this section, that are not going to romp, Mm-hmm. But one section. So my resolution is one section at a time. And so clean it up and replant it. And then I can move on to the next, because otherwise I'm all over the place and nothing gets finished. That's how I am. I don't think you're like that. I think you follow through better than I do. No, I think you follow through. I think you're more fastidious than I am.
Oh, maybe. But I'm not as tidy as you are.
Oh.
Or maybe that's because you have tours and I don't have many tours.
Right.
But, you were saying to pull out the ground covers, and I was with you, and I was thinking, oh, what is she going to put down, chopped wood mulch or something? But then you said you're going to plant plants.
Yes.
Because I can think of no better ground cover mulch than living plants.
Living mulch, right. And so I'm thinking and I'm pondering, and it gives me, because I did that section, it's a big section, in fall, kind of prepped it. And I know that what will happen in spring is that some of the remainders that I didn't get, I tried to dig out the roots of these things, but they'll sprout up here and there. And I'm going to have to do one more smaller cleanup. But I want to be ready with a plant or a number of plants to make like a mosaic. And, again, it might be ferns. It might be, I love trilliums. I love, some ephemerals, because it's in a place under shrubs. So it's it's bright shade, but it's shade. It's definitely shade. So I have to think about what I'm going to put there. And I have the winter to do that. But I need to be ready in the spring. So that was my kind of resolution, is give myself the time. I have the time to order plan to choose to order the plants, not a super rushed job. And then I can move on to the next section once I've
Sounds good.
one. Yeah. So wish me luck.
I took out a whole lot of Lamian last fall, so
yes.
We'll see. And I'm sure I've already planted bulbs there, so, nature abhors a vacuum, and so do I.
Yes. So what about you? Another one?
Well, this is a very hard one for me. Our friend Marco, if he doesn't like a plant, it's out. But I have so much trouble
letting go.
Ground cover is not so bad. That Lamiastrum, yeah, sure. But when it comes to trees, I've planted a whole lot of eastern dogwoods from the mountains of Mexico, the Urbaniana, which has fused bracts. I have lots of saplings that they're 8 feet tall now.
Right.
So this year, I hope they have some flowers. And out of these 8 trees that are very skinny because they're too close together, the ones that don't have nice flowers or nice shape, it's going to be a little arboricide, which is very hard for me, but I think of Marco all the time.
Yes. And so just for people who don't know, Marco was the founding director of horticulture of Wave Hill, the public garden in New York City and in the Bronx, and worked there for many, many years, a 52-year-old garden, and he was there probably, the first 40 years or 35 years, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. So, and he says, bury your dead and fast, which means if you have a languishing, a plant that's looking just miserable, stop fussing over it, start over, make a fresh start.
You made me think of something. Oh no. Or give it away. Oh no.
Don't give it to me. Don't give it to me.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Yeah. So another thing that I've done, I hate to say that I've done wrong or I've been bad, or but that's how I feel, and so I just want to say that out loud. That's how I feel. It makes me feel bad when I haven't taken my own advice or the wisdom that I know, from others. I haven't set a good example. And really what it is my garden is too big for me. It's 2.3 acres, and it's a lot. It's really a lot, too much to manage. And so stuff gets neglected. I'm getting ready for spring tours, you were mentioning before, in April and early May. The first ones are usually in the first or second week of May. And, I have to sort of say, hey, we're not going to get to that area. And so what happens is I close off that particular area, and I do that a couple of years in a row, and guess what? It's a mess. And one of the things I've noticed is that instead of, because I'm, again, having the tours, instead of, all my beds are in turf. So my beds are within grass. They're surrounded by grass. There's no stone edge or metal edge. Is that they're like islands, I guess is what I'm saying, in turf. And so the easiest thing is just to cut a clean edge with your edging tool and put on your mulch. Well, the thing is, though, the bed gets an inch bigger and an inch bigger and an inch bigger, right? Because There may be
because
some
it does.
because there might have been a plant that flopped over the edge and made the bed a little messy at the edge, so you cut it a little wide. Well, you do that for a few years without resowing some grass seed, right, and kindling that turf on the edge. You don't keep the bed the same shape and size; it gets bigger. And then guess what happens to your pathways?
Single file.
Oops, between two beds. So I need to do turf stuff. And I hate turf. I hate growing grass. I hate it. I just hate it. But I need to do it. So that's my other thing for the coming spring. And actually in the Northeast, the best area is like mid-August to mid to late September for turf repair. But I need to do some in spring this year, too. Have you done any of that? Have you?
Well, why do you hate it?
I just feel like, I don't know, I don't think I'm good at it, and I'm impatient, I think.
Okay.
And you need to keep it watered, and inevitably, I guess it's just bad luck, inevitably I'll do, I'll get out all the tools, I'll do everything, I'll get all the right supplies, I'll do it, and then it doesn't rain for 3 weeks. And, you water it the first few days, but then blah, 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 blah. So you know what I mean.
Right, and you need to water it every hour sometimes.
Right.
But you're not, and then reminds me of when I lost my hair sometimes, that little patchy thing coming in. I do renew the
edges,
grass pads, and I kind of do it in the spring.
Right.
I did it this fall too, and nothing happened. So, because September was so incredibly dry. But I usually, for most of the places where there still is grass, I'll spread about a half an inch layer of compost directly on the grass and rake it in. In some places, I'll put some soil mixed with compost and grass seed and try to patch it over. Mm-hmm. I bought some sod sometimes and put that down, and even sowed some grass seed in that when it started to fade. It's a different color, which is kind of weird.
It is weird. I know.
But I have these things. I don't know exactly what they're for. I think that they interlock and they have big spaces in them, so I can put them down on the grass seed, so I can still run the wheelbarrow over them, and the dogs still will stay off them. And that helps because if you're trying to grow grass with dogs and a wheelbarrow and yourself, you inevitably need to walk there.
Well, and that's the problem. As I said, and I'm going to have the first week of May, I have tours, and the first week of June, I have tours. So when is this grass going to grow? So again, I'm going to be closing off areas, I guess. But I have to do it. Because
you have to do it.
Because otherwise things get out of proportion and misshapen, and again, the paths get narrow and so forth. So I don't have to do every single one, and in fact, keeping up with the watering, and this is another place where I have to acknowledge my limitations and keep it simple. I have to pick an area and say, hey, I'm going to renovate this one in May, and I'm going to renovate this one in August, September period, not do the whole thing and have the place impassable in every direction.
Do you ever use the grass seed that's like coated with a moisture retentive?
I think I'm going to start. I think I'm going to do that this year because, and my objection is that a lot of that has chemical fertilizer included in it,
mm-hmm.
and that's my objection because I don't really want to purchase a product that has chemical fertilizer. So I'm going to do a little homework on that. But I like your idea with the compost. I mean, that's really the old style best way to go about it. And there's another wonderful thing that a friend, a sciencey kind of friend, told me about not long ago. Research from Cornell University and actually Iowa State, I believe it was, got together because they wanted to it was the turfgrass group at each university that was trying to help with damaged areas of football fields was where the research began, and also crabgrass coming into those damaged areas where the turf was weak. And, because crabgrass is like an annual and it'll sow into any void, speaking of, nature loves a vacuum. And so that research led to this, and they didn't want to use herbicides to kill off anything and to prep the new areas, the repaired areas. So they experimented and they came up with a protocol, and it's best done in, again, like the August, September, and these are cold winter zones. I'm talking about Iowa and Cornell University, upstate New York, where you do 4 times in a row, 2 weeks apart in that sort of late summer into fall period, you overseed just using your spreader, like you would put fertilizer on with a spreader or grass seed with a spreader.
Mm-hmm.
No prep at all. You just mow the lawn and you overseed 4 times 2 weeks apart. And with perennial rye especially. And it's amazing the results they've gotten. So it's like no prep, no, core aeration, no dethatching, no massive bringing in of soil or compost. And so that's another way to fix areas that are weedy or especially have, crabgrass invasion.
Well, is the idea that the ones coming up are shading the next ones or something?
Yes, exactly. And so, and because especially, again, it was originally crabgrass was one of the big problems, and that tends to happen in bare areas. So there was the opportunity, and also doing it late in the season, you're mowing even the crabgrass down so that it doesn't set seed, so that you're not getting more crabgrass for next year. So you're seeding into these areas, but it really is apparently quite effective. So I've read all the research reports. I'll give the link in the transcript of the show if people are interested in that. I've got to do some of this in spring, however. Okay.
I'm taking notes.
Okay, I'm sorry I've blathered on about that. So tell me another.
Overseed 4 times. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I'll give you the link too. It's a very interesting report, and it's been sort of synthesized, for lay people as well. But it's very very positive. So.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I resolved to clean my tools. I never clean them enough.
Never.
I've resolved to put things away after I use them. My whole life, I've never done that. I mean, I do it, but it's just out of my mind.
Were we separated at birth or something? Or is that possible?
Some people do this. You've seen. Some people are cooking, and while they're cooking, they're cleaning.
Yeah.
I can't imagine.
And you're a good cook, but you don't do that, right? You just pile it up in the sink.
I try. I'm better because I'm mindful of it now. That it's because in the end you get all this stuff.
Yeah.
So just try to do it if you can do it. Let's see. Many times when I've traveled around the country speaking and stuff, I'll meet people and they'll make a promise. Like they'll say, "Oh, you want that plant? I've got 10. Oh, let me send you one," and they never do.
Yeah.
Some people do, but most people don't. So I resolved years ago that if I say that out loud to anyone, I will follow through. And I'm sure they're surprised. And I just sent 3 saplings of American linden to Minnesota to a couple who I met who said, they were trying to find American linden and they couldn't find them for their big property. And Louis made a wonderful box, and I sent 5-foot tall American lindens, bare root, to these people. So I think that's nice, and I'm going to do that the rest of my life, or keep my mouth shut.
Okay, so if you promised, you are going to follow through. Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
And I have so far.
Okay.
A lot.
So, and any other that you want? Any other sort of resolutions that you've got going on over there?
Well, every year I say don't shop. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, I know. Don't buy any more plants, right?
Don't buy any more plants.
Right. How's that going?
And then I end up healing them in. I think I might make a new nursery bed. When we first moved here, we made a big nursery bed, and everything got plugged in. And then you could really think about it and still impulse buy.
Right.
But I've got some land across the river that's open, but it's got deer and it's got black walnuts. So that's 2 issues to deal with. But I might make a little fenced area. I'd have to get water there too, because I like to shop. And you see something and you want it. I don't know what that acquisitiveness is about exactly. Probably something that happened in my pre-1-year-old self or something.
Oh,
I fall in love.
Yeah. No, I know. I say I'm not going to buy anything either, but then, oh well.
And then somebody sends you something. Even though I was complaining that people don't. Sometimes, we get something from a company or something. And even though I don't want that plant, but, as we said, I can't kill it.
Yeah. I think the other thing is I want to continue to be more and more observant. And I'm thinking of this, I think, because I saw this article in the New York Times this past week about fire blight moving north, a disease that especially affects fruit trees like apples and so forth. So is very dangerous in orchards, but has been mostly kept in the southern United States. And with the shift in climate, another one of these things that's out of control and moving
and resistant to antibiotics.
Yes, and so
resistant.
Right, because exactly. So and also some of our modern varieties of apples that have become ubiquitous have less resistance apparently to it because it hasn't been a problem in the north, and because of the way apples are grown in commercial orchards today, which is almost like they don't even look like trees. I mean, they're these like little, I don't even know what you would call them. I mean, they want to get like 50, they plant them really close and they prune them really hard and they want to get like 50 apples off each one. But the density of trees is so great compared to a full-size tree spaced, 10 feet apart or 20 feet apart. So the density works out to their favor, and it's easier to manage them as these. Again, I don't even, it doesn't even look like a tree to me the way a lot of them are grown. Anyway, so my resolution, my thing is that I have become more conscious and more aware and taken more time when I see something that looks different to me, that looks odd, an insect I've never seen before, just some disfigurement, something on a surface of a leaf, whatever. I am taking more time, and I'm going to do even more of that to say, hey, what really is this? Take a camera phone picture or take a sample, put it in a plastic bag or whatever, and when you have the time, try to key it out, or better yet, send it to, if it's really something that looks like it's bad, that's having a detrimental effect on a major plant, send it to the pathology lab of my state university, of the cooperative extension or whatever. But I want to be more conscious, and I want to learn, what do these things look like? Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a garden forensics? I don't know. What
Exactly.
would you call that?
Exactly. And it's worth taking the time, because sometimes these things, like with fire blight in apples, if you have full-size trees, if it just gets in at one branch, you can remove and destroy that branch, and you probably can keep it from getting into the vascular system of the whole tree. Not when it's been pruned in the commercial orchards to this weird little thing, but it gets through the whole system too fast. But in the home, if you have 2 apple trees, you probably can save them. And so I just want to be more vigilant that way.
Well, that's good advice, and I think people should go to A Way to Garden, because you're always writing about the next thing.
I know. Then there's so many next things. I don't want to be all dreary and down. So we
Did you have any snow this week?
Like 18, 19 inches, yeah.
All the trees are bent down. I think my first resolution is to go out and see what I can do.
Yeah. Yeah, I tend not to poke around until they spring back up themselves, but we'll see. It's warming up a little bit, so we'll see if if it's really, really, really cold and branches are brittle. I don't want to really bang around too much out there.
I know that's what they say, and that's good advice. But at least I should look, just like you're saying. We should keep our eyes open, and we should look for aberrations and anything else that might be odd, and check out A Way to Garden. And I love that when I visit your site, I learn something, and I learn something about the other creatures in the garden besides the...
Not just the plants, you mean?
Ones with chlorophyll, right.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of that, I think if we have like one more minute, one thing I'd like to say to everybody as a resolution, speaking of things like climate change and the impact it's having and the new challenges it's presenting for everyone on the planet, and including, farmers and gardeners and so forth, everyone should join a citizen science project in 2020, whether they count birds or they, identify insects and post their pictures, their camera phone pictures online on bugguide.net, whatever it is, iNaturalist.org, whatever you want to do, as obscure or as mainstream, that data is going to really help scientists to have a track of what's keep track of what's going on in different areas where they couldn't otherwise have eyes, right? So I feel like each one of us should do that and make it a practice, even if it's once a week, 10 minutes we devote to it, or half an hour. I just feel like that's something we can do, and it engages us with the reality of what's outside again, looking more closely.
What's it called when you notice the first bloom in spring? And
phenology, like
right,
Phenology, yeah. So, okay, so on that note, I'll see you in the next decade, huh, hon?
Oh, my gosh, you're right. Thanks so much.
Thanks for taking time, Ken.
My pleasure.
Okay.
Underwriting support from Timber Press, your go-to resource for books in gardening and nature. Whether you're a new gardener, a professional at the top of your field, or a reader interested in the wonders of the natural world, their books are there to help you grow. timberpress.com.
And thanks to all of you for tuning in too. In fact, for tuning in the whole year. Thank you. Don't miss an episode. You can subscribe free to the podcast version of the show on Stitcher or iTunes or Spotify. And you can find me anytime at awaytogarden.com. You can find Ken at kendruse.com. And happy gardening, meantime, and happy New Year.
A Way to Garden with Margaret Roach is a joint production of awaytogarden.com and the smallest NPR station in the nation, Robin Hood Radio.